I think you're going to really enjoy our presentation tonight. Anders Wold from GE Healthcare's Clinical Care Solutions business is our guest of honor. He's a wonderful man. He introduced me to his attorney, so I think we're in for a good time. That's never happened to me before. So we're just going to ask the question, and we're going to look, and we're going to get the thumbs up and the thumbs down. No, seriously, that did happen. I hate to start on a somewhat somber note, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that today our country suffered an unspeakable tragedy in Las Vegas, and I mentioned it earlier this morning that we should take just a second to think about the people's lives who were lost and injured and whose lives will never be the same, and to pay some respect to the brave men and women who run towards danger. And I just wanted to take a moment just to reflect upon them and think about them. Hopefully we keep them in our thoughts tonight, even as we're having a great time. So, with that being said, this is a night of celebration. This is a night that a ton of work goes into, and I just want to say, first of all, to the staff that work with me who put in so much hard work, so many hours to make this a great night. I just want to give them a round of applause. They're behind the scenes. They're the reason your name badges are where they are. They're the reason that we have this event running so smoothly today. This was our largest event we've had. It's twice the size of last year. We've had twice as many exhibitors. We've had twice the number of speakers. I can't tell you how smoothly this is run. And I've been doing this. This is my 19th DeviceTalks event in 6 years. I call it my penance. When I got married, I complained about every single part of it. Oh my God, why do we have to pay for this? That's ridiculous. I don't want to think about that. Now I've done 19 weddings in 6 years. I'm bald, and my wife is laughing her butt off every night. I also want to thank our incredible exhibitors and sponsors and supporters, some of whom have been with us for 6 years. They took the risk on us. They're the first people to sign, and I know that the startups in the room know how important angel investors are to your business, and these are our angel investors. They back us when we need them. So I just want to thank, we have so many exhibitors and sponsors, I can't thank them all, but I do want us all to give them a round of applause because they've helped make this evening possible. And so as I said, you know, we saw the worst of man today, but I also think that it's important to show some of the best of people and what we can do. And my good friend Sarah McDonald, who used to run Massachusetts Biotechnology Council, she was I would say the lifeblood of that organization, has ventured into a new organization called Life Science Cares. And this organization seeks to help life science companies connect with local charities and institutions in our city, which make a difference. And I can't think of a better way to honor people than to have her come up and just say a few words about this organization, and perhaps we can get your organization involved in helping some of our Boston institutions. So I'm just going to bring her up.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Brian and the team from MassDevice for having me here today. That's big expectations that I hope I and the rest of the organization at Life Science Cares can fill. So Life Science Cares is a new effort to harness the industry's resources, both financial and human, to fight poverty in Greater Boston. And I was in the elevator pitch session earlier today, so I was working on my elevator pitch for you all. We are your outsourced corporate social responsibility and employee engagement platform with a dash of networking and loads of real, tangible impact mixed in. We're working with about 100 companies already to identify and then support the nonprofit organizations fighting poverty in Greater Boston, first with a financial donation, But then importantly, after that, with human capital, we provide volunteers from the industry, strategic support from the industry, brains and resources that we know all of your companies have. And we're working with companies across the spectrum, small and early stage companies that aren't doing corporate social responsibility on their own. We're your partner. And for the larger companies, we're happy to help your employees network and build off of the work that you're already doing. We operate on the belief that collectively, the life science industry here in this area has the very, very real ability to impact poverty, one of the greatest social issues of our time here. And so we invite you to engage with Life Science Cares, either as companies or as individuals, in our events, in our volunteer opportunities, and our programs. And to learn more, just visit lifesciencecares.org. Thank you very much.
Here, stay here for a second. So I'm going to have Sarah pull the winners of our 2 prizes from our Passport program.
Oh, goodness.
These folks visited over 20 sponsors today to get their tickets stamped. As you can see, it's a unbiased third-party picking. Okay.
Arnulfo Rios.
Are you here?
Arnold Rios.
Arnold Rios. So we're going to send him a DeviceTalks board game as a prize. There's only 10, so don't worry, it can't take too long.
Joshua Davis.
All right, Josh.
Joshua Davis from R&Q Solutions. Thank you for participating.
Okay, so do you have to take a flight home? Okay, so you're going to get the big bucks. How about that?
Can I say yes and get the sponsor?
Sure, which would you like?
iPad?
Oh, he wants the iPad. Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. For the Sonos Play Bar, it's going to be fun.
Cassie Cazavellan.
Okay, another DeviceTalks board game winner. We will send them something.
Faith Bradley.
Yes? All right, thank God.
Yeah, that was far too muted for a winner.
Do you have a 90-inch television?
Because you're going to need one.
There you go. It's bigger than she is. Thank you so much. So, no, that thing is really cool. It's a play bar. Surround sound. It's everything you'd want in a TV thingy-doing. So, also tonight, this is the Big 100 Gala. The Big 100 is an annual magazine that we put out as part of our medical design and outsourcing publication that recognizes the top 100 medical device companies in the industry. And we're going to recognize the companies that are Massachusetts, have a Massachusetts presence, or they have a member of the team here. What we're going to do is I'm going to announce them all at once. We're going to give a round of applause, and then if you wouldn't mind, if you belong to that organization, stay after. We can give a picture of you with the magazine cover and your award. So we're going to I'm going to name them out, and my executive editor, Brad, is going to shake his head when he realizes that I didn't QC this with him. So Abiomed, B. Braun, Boston Scientific, GE Healthcare, Haemonetics, Hologic, Johnson & Johnson, LeMaitre Vascular, Medtronic, Neurometrics, Next Stage Medical, Siemens Healthineers, and Teleflex. Let's give them all a big round of applause. I didn't get any wrong. So we're going to have pictures with that afterwards. So now for the main event. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you here tonight to hear from Mr. Anders Wold. He is CEO of GE's Clinical Healthcare Solutions Group, which was born, I believe, the ultrasound group, correct? So why don't you come on up here. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And here we go.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Anders, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me and having us. I actually have the whole team here. You mentioned the lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. But I do have the commercial team to make the right blend for us.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now, you're not based in Boston, though, of course.
I am
Where do you join
Norwegian.
us from today?
I live in Norway,
Okay.
and I run the clinical care solutions business, which is about a $5 billion business in the healthcare, GE Healthcare, which is another $20 billion business. So it's a huge component of that business today.
Yeah, that's quite a company that you belong to. And I mean, how long did you think it took you? You've been there about 18 years, right?
I've been in GE in 18 years, and my background is I'm an engineer by profession. I have been out in that corridor in my earlier past. I was a startup company, built an ultrasound small company from scratch. You're just a handful of people and come up with some great technology, not so good products. and over time we kind of found our way, and down the line we got acquired by GE,
Right.
GE Healthcare at some point.
So you started that company. Was it your typical sort of garage-based startup, or what was your role in that company?
Well, I came as an R&D engineer at some point, hardware electronics, and then soon enough I was a product manager, and I was the order manager, I was the packer, I did everything. So that's what we all did. I mean, we were 10 people in the beginning, and that was a true startup. And that mentality, I think without that it wouldn't have come as long as I did, basically, because you learn everything from scratch, and you really, the key thing I think we learned was we failed multiple times, but the thing that sticks all the time is you can never forget about the customer. That's ultimately what it is, and you get completely derailed by great technology or some fantastic opportunity in the market, but if you start to forget about your customer, you really don't know where you're going. So you have to really watch the customer and the customer needs. And I'd like to come back to that a little bit later.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think when they bought your company, did you say, I'm going to spend the next couple decades of my life at GE, or what were you thinking at that point?
Well, that point was very different because we had gone through 4 iterations of other owners, being bought, sold again, and GE, and say, well, that's another 2 years, and there will be another one. That wasn't the case.
Right.
And the person that was behind the acquisition at the time is somebody many of you know. He works in Medtronic today. He's the head of Medtronic, so Omar Ishrak.
Yes.
He happened to be an earlier colleague of mine, so he had been in the same company for a while. So we started to think, maybe this is a little bit longer-term operation, and it became a foundation for GE Healthcare, this ultrasound component, and it became the ultrasound business for GE Healthcare at that time. So in many ways, GE Healthcare is a company that is built very much through acquisitions. It has a good blend of organic and inorganic growth, but that we became kind of a poster child for a good acquisition and really made it through.
So you came over with Mr. Ishrak, but that does remind me of it's a pretty incredible history at GE of building business leaders. Just to name a few: Greg Lucier at NuVasive, Mike Minogue at Abiomed, Mike Mahoney at Boston Scientific. Is there a common thread that links these men, besides the fact that they all, at some point, worked for Jeff Immelt, and they're all done very well for themselves?
I think, first of all, we have to come to terms with GE is a massive company, and a company of that size, is 150 billion type companies. You have to have an infrastructure, you have to have systems for almost everything. There's a company built on processes. And the same comes to building people, talents, from basics, and you build management, etc. And I think the people you mentioned, and there could be a lot of other ones, and maybe there even somebody in the room here that's been in GE. I think it's a little bit of an educational institution for management. And you get exposed to all kinds of things, from early startups in acquisitions, you build organic, inorganic. You have to really think about return on investment every single day. So it's a financial driven company. You globalize it. You get into everything from R&D to supply chain to your whole ecosystem, which you do have out in the corridor here. You know, that kind of, so you get the whole A to Z experience. And that's unique.
Yeah.
And I think that really drives it. And we could have mentioned maybe 100 other names that shouldn't be named because they failed, right? But that's a caveat because not everybody gets to the top.
Right. But I'm wondering if there was something that Jeff did during his tenure that fostered that culture of excellence. Was it a way of sort of how he set expectations? Was it coaching, or was it just the culture that was set up there?
I think Jeff Immelt took over in a time where it's very critical and it's a change for GE at the time, and he is clearly a visionary person that could get people to all do almost anything, because he kind of got the sense that it was ambitious, it was possible, it was big. And I think he created that atmosphere, and he gave you the leeway to operate and execute with a lot of metrics and so on. But I think that created the leaders like that. So there's been an atmosphere in this whole team. And we have a new great CEO now, actually became the chairman today, actually, John Flannery.
Right. Your former, I guess,
former
boss.
GE Healthcare leader. Similar style in many ways, very visionary, know how to run companies, and had been in GE for a long time. So I think you will see a lot of the same thing going on.
So ambitious, possible, and big. Yeah. So you were telling me also that one of the things that you have culturally in the company is a sort of an internal shark tank as well. So how does that work?
Yeah, so the problem with being big is that you get slow or you're bureaucratic, things take a long time, and at the same time you come to meetings like this and you see 20 companies that moves 10x speed what you can do at a much lower cost, right? And that's our competition today. Truly it is. And we see that just in the basic ultrasound business, which is one component of my division today, there may be 10 global competitors. In China, there may be 100. 100. They're all startups, they're moving, and some of them are going to make it, no question. So how can we battle that? So we started to think you can't have just one big project, say I fund it for $5 million and 3 years later you have a product. That doesn't work. That was old style. So we have, many of you are probably familiar with FastWorks, lean startup kind of methodology. That is one piece of it. So you have to do experiments and retire risk as fast as you can and move on, pivot very quickly. That's really, you set out your leap of faith assumptions and you try to retire them as quickly as you can, and then you come on to your real product at some point, minimal viable products. So we do the same for funding. So even our smallest group may be funded, maybe they are $2 million or something, and have to fight for $200,000-300,000 project in a Shark Tank style environment. So they come and present for a small group, cross-functional, mission-based, and see how can we do that. Go, no go. That's how it works. And that mentality brings us back to what we started to talk about, the startup situation. And you kind of build that mentality into it, and you get away from the bureaucracy, and you get speed to it. So I think we try to blend the big company with these small startup mentalities. And I personally, even at my level, I coach several of these projects myself, because I get kind of the nerve in what's valuable, what's very important, and you really get an understanding how people are thinking about it.
Right. So let me drill down on that. So it's division heads come and have an idea that they want funding for internally at GE, and they have to go in front of a panel of folks. Are you guys like mean like they are on Shark Tank? Or you kind of...
Yes. Well, we kind of mean. I would say we give them 10 minutes. 10 minutes presentation. As simple as that. It's very similar.
Okay.
But we obviously there's a little bit more to it. But it's to replicate that whole mentality. You need to know your story. Most of our teams fail miserably in the beginning because they don't know the customer. They don't know the market. They have a fantastic technology idea, but it's not related to survival financially. That's really what happens almost every single time. So they come back for the third and fourth and the fifth round. Okay, now they know the market. Okay, this is how we're actually going to make money. This is how we're going to rate returns. Here is the cost and the whole profit for what they do. So you actually replicate that, and you train business leaders like that.
So even at that level, they're first in love with technology first, without any.
Yeah. You can't kill technology ideas, but you have to make certain you blend in the commercial component of it.
So they have to know their patient and who they're going to serve. So that's the first question.
Yeah.
And so, because I'm trying to extrapolate some help for some of our startups in the room here. So what other kinds of things that gets them past your level there?
Well, I think in many ways, some of these projects may be huge. I mean, today in healthcare, for instance, we stand in front of a huge transformation. I mentioned healthcare is $20 billion revenue, so we need to make the right decisions in terms of how we pick our strategy. We all know that healthcare today is faced with enormous challenges in cost, right? At the same time, most of the developed worlds are aging, so the cost is getting even worse by the day. So that problem exists in almost every country. I mean, in the US, we have politics around it, how to kind of control your cost. Same thing goes on almost everywhere. At the same time, we know that technology is racing ahead. Mobility, digital, there's a lot of things that's going to change here, and this is the topic of this Congress. Right. How can we come up with solutions that curb this and find a solution to the cost piece? So that's one element of that discussion. So when you're faced with these things, you have to kind of bring in all the elements, and I would say there's another third element here. It's the customer or the patient, because when cost is being loaded on patients and customers in a different way, customers will start to ask questions and be demanding. That parameter has really not been. I don't know how many of you that are in the device development and have a great idea thought about the actual payer or the actual receiver of the service. So that's another element. So you bring all these elements together, then you start to see all these drivers. So in healthcare today in GE, we say, we paint this picture. We can't go out and develop boxes anymore. We can do that, but they have to have something more. We have to have an outcome of this. There has to be something that drives a solution for our customers that controls the cost. We are able to address that and help with whether this is an economic value proposition, or it could be something that's more precise, but it's connected in some fashion. So there's all these elements that needs to be brought in. So at the end of the day, I think today there's less about the clinical value proposition. There's much more about the economic value proposition. So outcomes and solutions along that line is really where we are shifting all our focus today. So when you ask a question, where are we going? That's exactly where we are. We are developing MR, CT machines, yes, better, and ultrasound, but they will be connected. They will have a value proposition that are tied economically to the customer and their situation. Yeah. And that's where we start to talk about cloud-enabled, they're wireless, there is machine learning, all these elements needs to be brought in here. And that's so the GE healthcare ship is kind of turning digital here with those elements.
So I'm thinking about if you're talking about innovating for cost versus innovating for a clinical setting. I know it's not a sort of either or proposition there, but I don't know, it doesn't seem as exciting, frankly, to innovate for cost. Can we still get the same groundbreaking, exciting technologies if you're innovating to bring cost out of the system rather than to change entire paradigms of care? I mean, are we looking at big enough, or is the cost of healthcare, a penicillin-sized problem?
Yeah, I think coming back to the beginning of the conversation here is that if you develop technology that's exciting and solve a clinical problem, but if you can't get paid, you're dead in the water. It's part of the whole element. You have to really understand your market, your customer. If that customer cannot pay, I mean, there is no way we're going to survive here. So I think fundamentally know your customer and your market, and then go back. If it's that you have to take cost out of product, or you have to connect 100 MR machines and making certain that image is optimized through those and get a better solution, that's exciting technology. You get all engineers excited about stuff like that, machine learning and things like that. Everybody wants to work on it. What does it solve? It solves actually the economic problem more than the clinical problem. I think you have to think about it in that way. For instance, we developed devices, and I have one here. This is an ultrasound system. They used to be 300 pounds weight, cost Mike $300,000, and these are kind of a fractional cost, and it weighs like a bottle of water. That's kind of how it is, fits in, and it scans at the same level.
Wow.
Okay, so why would we take out so much cost? Why would we bring it down to this cost level? Because the market is asking for stuff like that. And now it's, okay, we did a mistake when we developed it the first time. We didn't connect it. It wasn't connected. Now it's connected.
Right.
Cloud enabled.
Where are they selling that, though? Is that in developing markets, emerging markets?
It sells everywhere.
Okay.
The primary care doctor in the US, it sells in specialty. You go the rounds in the US hospital, they have it in the pocket. They do a quick check. They do it in developed markets, midwives. You can scan your bladder before dinner.
Yeah.
And they can do all kinds of things with it. So this is a very versatile kind of device.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about this is that you get cost of technology down, and you're addressing new users. If you get new users, you get new customers, you get new market. That's really what this does.
So that you're selling that for how much now?
Yeah, we sell it for approximately $10,000.
Okay, so that's like a $290,000 delta, right?
Yeah.
So how many more of those can you sell to make up for that $290,000 delta?
As of today, we have sold some in the range of 23,000 units, which is massive.
Yeah.
And those are all new users. Those are markets, so it's not replacing the 300,000. It's actually adding new, because you find new users. And that's the whole thing about technology today. Don't try to innovate and replace, try to also find new users. I think that's what it is. And especially since we talk about the economic value proposition, if it could be connected, digitized at the same time, I really think we could cross over.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of sticking on this cost question in the United States. I don't know if you know this, but we're in kind of a big debate about healthcare in this country. So, I mean, just, we have on one side the effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act. On the other side, you have efforts to do Medicare for all. And there's a lot of other plans involved, but those are kind of the two sides that are drawing lines right now. You've been involved in so many different innovation efforts around the globe. Is there a preferred system for innovation in your opinion? Does it matter what sort of payment system you have in terms of healthcare access and things like that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I go back to the origin of the challenge here. The challenge is the cost and provide healthcare to the population through some system, some payment system in either country. We are present in 150 countries around the world. We can't get engaged into politics or the systems as such. We have to adapt to whatever it is, today, tomorrow, etc. That's really the premise for that discussion. So when we develop a solution like this or something else, make certain it's diversified enough that it can tackle one solution which is today or whatever it is tomorrow. We just can't deal with that. And I think the whole discussion here is truly about the real problem is really that the cost of the healthcare system is too big. How do you get your arms around that?
Right.
As a device and healthcare provider, find solutions to the economic value proposition, to the economic issue. Right. So really, have no opinion about it. I think it's going to change now. Tomorrow is going to be something else. In 10 years, we have to adapt as fast as we can. Those that doesn't adapt will be gone.
So you're also doing you do so much work in the developing world, and you see these technologies, a lot of these handheld technologies kind of being developed there for use in those settings. But I mean, I think about the United States, and we have massive closures of rural hospitals, and you're seeing sort of our own healthcare system here being stretched to its limit. How do we bring those lessons back here into the United States? How do we start thinking about our own healthcare problem less like put a hospital here, and more like, hey, we got to get our technology out into the field? How do we? Are there ways we can? You guys are working on that as well.
That's a good question. There's a lot of things going on, and then just take some examples. We just signed up a couple of very big agreements with local hospitals here. Brigham and Women's, for instance, is one of them. The Boston Children's is there. There's a few. And those are 10-year contracts. And what we're trying to do is to try to look at the whole healthcare system. How can we as a provider go in and say, could we digitize? Could we go across the whole continuum and use machine learning? Could we find a smarter way to deal with that? Mm-hmm. And that goes across all devices. It's not just the smaller ones. There could be an MR system. It could be anything. How can we build that? So it's a Partner Health is kind of the group that is doing this today. And we are involved in that to try to see how will a hospital battle with these costs, whatever reference there is in the payment system. How can we, as a provider in this, provide equipment or some level of solutions? That's kind of the premise. I think you're going to see more and more of these partnerships, mm-hmm. because these are two big problems to solve for a single company. But I think small companies can partner, because there's no way GE or any of the bigger companies can do everything. So our premise for development going forward has to be with a lot of partnerships. And I think that's an opportunity. And in this audience, I would say that's the invitation, because you will find solutions, whether it's a specific software solution or there's a specific device, across the whole healthcare continuum. There's so many different applications. There is no way one company can deal with everything. So I think the way to go forward is try to get into some of these activities and find a role.
Mm-hmm. So let's drill down a little bit into your own sort of backyard ultrasound technology and sort of your background. So currently, it's a diagnostic tool. But I mean, what are the other applications that you think are out there? What's the limits of this technology besides being smaller and more nimble and handheld? Is there therapeutic use for ultrasound?
Yeah.
How do we push that boundary?
Yes. No. First of all, if we look back in history here, the first ultrasound systems, if you go to the start of my career and even before that, some 30 odd years back, you have to have a pretty good imagination to judge the image. Really, it was a very questionable kind of diagnostics. And that's become much, much better. So we have been kind of riding on, the Moore's law here with much better technology all the time at half the cost and so on. We have been on that wave all the time. So in other words, these have become much better devices. So they're eating its way into X-ray first, CT next, even a little bit to MR, so all the more expensive modalities. It's portable, low cost, and so on. So that found new areas. And I would say a lot of technology today can go that way. There is a space outside. There are ultrasound today which are being used for treatment. We are not in that field today, physiotherapy and some areas. But what you mentioned, could it be used in some other way? So there are some ideas about using ultrasound for drug delivery, for instance. Mm-hmm. There is no product today, but there's a lot of papers on it today. And in theory, you can use ultrasound to burst the bubbles and deliver medication at some point, regional medication. So that's experimental right now, and there's no products at this today. But GE is also in that field. We have contrast agent. We have a lot of different pieces of this puzzle. So clearly, this is on the list to be explored.
Yeah. So do you think you'll drive that train as a company, or do you think somebody in this room who's coming up
I-
tinkering is going to be the ones who kind of push that envelope?
I think there will be other companies pushing harder than us on this one. But we will be there with a lot of infrastructure. And you see a lot of these activities today.
And we'd be there with corporate investment dollars to put into that?
Could be.
Is that an area?
I think that's another topic. How do we finance and how do we build things going forward? And one of the things we're looking at is namely to partner with the companies to co-invest or even start a new co with GE together. So we have elements of that on the horizon as well, because some of them are maybe bigger bets, some are maybe different risk profile, some may attract different kinds of funding, which we will not do in GE. So it varies a little bit along that. But we are interested in most of these. We'll invite them to the Shark Tank and see what comes out.
All right. So outside of your role as the CEO of this $5 billion business, you're also an avid mountaineer.
Yeah.
So first, I was wondering what the attraction is to that.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm Norwegian.
There's follow-up questions, so I can get them all out or what. So first, what's the attraction? And then second, give me some of the lessons you've learned on the mountain, and do you ever apply them to the boardroom, and then do you ever apply some boardroom lessons to the mountain?
Yeah, no, it's a hobby of mine: mountaineering, cross-country skiing, really climbing some high mountains and things like that. It's really something from when I was younger, but. I think the attraction is really to push yourself, to take some risk and learn something new. It's been kind of a mentality along everything I've done. And I think it comes if you are an engineer, you want to innovate things, you have to take some risk, otherwise you will not be successful. You'll be a me too. Yeah. And that's the mentality I try to put into our team too. We can't be just me too, we'll be lost. So you have to take certain risk, and you have to be prepared for a pivot.
Yeah.
Hopefully not fall down, and certainly not look back or down. That's the rule number one if you do climbing. So you have to be very confident with that. I think that's really the question about if you take risk and push yourself, you can push your team to much more than anybody think. It's a little bit of that going on, and we know that startups do that all the time. I really think of it every day because. In a big company like GE, there's a tendency to just fall into the process and slow down. So that's what we bring into the boardroom or whatever we want, and that's why I said, the fast works, the Shark Tanks is a little bit of that part of it. I think everybody should have a healthy component of that. If they're not climbing, you can do something different.
What's the hardest part about it? I mean, they always say it's descending from the peak, but I mean, is that really the hardest part, or is it like the first step?
No, I don't know. I think people are different with things like that. It's some. If you're a mountain climber, you're not afraid of heights, so that's not there.
Yeah.
You're just how big should the next leap be? The problem is you get almost like a small disease. You want to go to the higher the next time. You want a challenge.
Yeah.
You want that extra traverse that nobody's done, kind of thing. I'm not on that level, but that's kind of a little bit that.
Are you still doing this already?
Yeah, but not at the highest level.
Climb Everest or something like that?
No.
No.
Mont Blanc.
Mont Blanc?
Yeah.
You've done that already,
yes.
or that's on the board?
No, that's done.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. So that's ambitious.
So what's next? I don't know.
Right? What's next?
No, I think what's next in I don't know. Take another example. So I have 3 children. So I used to be a cross-country coach in my young days, actually for the Norwegian national team. In Norway, cross-country is a national sport, so it's a pretty big deal. So my work took me to live in Asia for a few years, and small kids, and I came back and nobody could ski. That was pretty bad, right? Yeah. So they didn't like doing like their father, right, to do the skiing. So they, at that time, everybody wanted to do snowboarding. I was great in cross-country, but snowboarding is very different. If some of you guys here from Boston probably knows a little bit about this. So I had to learn snowboarding. at the age of 40. So
Yeah.
that was that was another challenge.
There you go.
So the advice and the thing is, do something you can't do. You have to step out of your comfort zone and do something different.
I agree.
And I think you learn so much more from that, and you can translate that to everything you want.
And now you're going down the mountain.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So you said you could take a couple questions. Sarah, do you have the microphone? So if anybody has a question, why don't we just throw a couple out at Anders? And there's one back there.
Hi, Anders. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Louis from Purple Sun. Can you take us back to your startup days and maybe pick one thing that was your favorite event during your build-up, and then kind of what was one of the biggest challenges that you always look back on and say, I won't make that mistake again?
Yeah. That's a very good question, and there are plenty of examples, I have to say, about this. But one that comes to mind, and it ties a little bit back to some discussions. We had this device we wanted. We completely focused on technology. We had developed a small in the lab some blood flow measurement equipment, so you could actually measure the blood flow. And at that time, electronics wasn't really so advanced, so the only way to measure it was to listen to the pitch, the sound. That was kind of the way you do that. And we went to some of the cardiologists and say, well, can you use this? And they were all excited about it because they could judge the sound and they knew when the valve was opening and things like that. And they went to another 10. I actually went to maybe 20 customers and said, well, that's it. We got somehow funding and we want to globalize it. After the customer number 150, there was no more customers. This wasn't representative for your product. The market wasn't there. We were too focused on technology. We haven't tested out really how that worked and could globalize. We could sell to those 150, great, but that's it. So we almost went broke at the time. So it was a huge lessons learned that you have to really understand your market in a different way. I would say that's a typical example here. I don't know if anybody is in the same situation. You build a prototype. How do you test it without spending all the money? How do you make certain that all your customers are going to, you get the full specifications and so on. I would say another one, the first version of this one is called the V-Scan. Was a little bit similar. It was developed by, I told the team, say, how small can you make it, how lightweight and how cheap? No compromise on quality. So what did I forget? The customer. Okay, that was a technology specification thing. Came on the market, and there were obviously a few missing things. We were lucky because it kind of hit fairly well, but it was still missing. And the biggest miss was, it's not a platform. Today, when you make small devices, you have to have platforms. You can roll out version number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. My commercial team is sitting here and say, wow, why didn't we have number 10 now? It's like a phone, right? Mm-hmm. So platforming is critical when you develop stuff. There's no way you're going to have one single product and survive, in my mind. It's really a platforming discussion. So that's another one. I actually could go on, but
I'm sure you could.
There are many.
Well, thank you. That is actually, we are out of time for tonight, but I really appreciate you sharing some of your experience. I didn't see that in your pocket. That's pretty cool. Very fun. So let's give Anders Wold a warm round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just turn off your mic.
Yeah.
Go back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here at DeviceTalks Boston. Next year, DeviceTalks Boston will be a week from this week. It'll be 2 days. It'll be twice as exciting. And we're going to have our event in California, DeviceTalks West, on December 11th and 12th, where we'll be welcoming members from Medtronic, Google, and you name it. Please go check out our website, DeviceTalks. And please join us in California, but definitely join us next year. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you to our team, and thank you to our sponsors. We're all set. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.